Arizona, Mr. Schweikert, to inquire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Madam Secretary. And this is always tough when we're trying to do this in, 3.5-minute increments. Some of my fellow members have already said or asked, so I want to take a slightly different, and this probably won't be in your notes. Inflationary environment. We have a number of economists now who actually believe it has grown to be much more structural at a number of levels and beyond the supply chain portion calculation. If it's true that we're in a higher inflationary environment for 3 years, 5 years, to the end of the decade, we're working on a math project right now, what it does to particularly retirees, to the working poor, and the distortive effect, particularly when you start to look at our formula on Medicare co-payments, the fact the Medicare Trust Fund, even though we got a semi-positive actuarial report, 30, 36, 38 months, has Treasury started to do any possible calculations of the percentage of our brothers and sisters who are in retirement who will be in poverty in the next few years, functionally because of the structural inflation, even with the COLA adjustments, which never get close. And then with the health care, which is dramatically more in this, and the part of Social Security goes into that, I'm in great concern that we're focusing on today's inflation number and not realizing the economic devastation that we're going to see throughout the coming decade.
So I don't have any numbers to offer you right this minute, but I believe there are simulations that look at what the effect would be, but there's I see no way in which inflation is a decade-long matter. The Federal Reserve is committed to bringing down inflation. We're committed to bringing down inflation.
But Madam Secretary, and this is, you and I have known each other a long time. You've been very kind to me in the past, but you're a labor economist. Oh, no, I'm good. And you and I had some fascinating demographic discussions. This is different than 40 years ago. The demographic curve we're in is much more difficult. And yes, we can, the Federal Reserve can push up unemployment as one of my Democrat members and create the misery. But the structural issues I see, particularly for our over 65 population, there's some ugliness out there in the numbers. And can I throw one other thing at you? And this is always hard when we're doing this at rapid pace. You keep referring to an international minimum tax as fairness. We've whiteboarded this multiple times on your numbers, and we'd see no fairness as long as the rest of the world is using a refundable VAT tax. You and I have had the VAT conversation. If Germany exports, they remove the VAT. If we import to them, so they purchase, they add the VAT. How do you get a sort of ceteris paribus equalization unless your model is solely, hey, it's domestic production, domestic consumption in each country? Then you're making a fairness argument. But from an international trade standpoint, we functionally have structurally a made in America tax because we don't use a value-added tax model. The rest of the world does. And your model is not offsetting anything close to those numbers.
I'll let the gentlelady answer the question, please.
They're able to rebate those taxes because the imposition of a tax raises the costs of all of their domestic producers. And so it's WTO consistent to offset what would be the adverse impact of that VAT on their international trade. I don't see that as an advantage. The purpose of the global agreement is to make sure that all corporations, whether that are heavily engaged in international business, whether they're based in the United States or in Europe or in the Cayman Islands, that all of them are forced to pay at least a minimum tax of 15% on their income, and that does level the playing field.
Thank you. Thank the gentleman. Let me recognize the